Hey guys, it's Rabbit 101 here, and today's Tuesday, but like I said in my last video on Tuesday, I decided I'm not going to do Tech Tuesdays for a while, so today I just thought I'd go over the errated band cards that have returned to us due to their reprints in Premium Gold 2. I will not be going over the Chaos Emperor Dragon and Democ, because they're not out yet. I'm going over these 5 mainly so I can discuss their impact on the game. So, I figured we should just start with the most broken and work our way down from there. So, beginning off, let's start with Crush Card Virus. So, for all of those of you who haven't seen its new effect, I'll read it. Tribute 1 Dark Monster with 1,000 or less attack. Your opponent takes no damage until the end of the next turn. Also, you look at your opponent's hand and all monsters they control, and if you do, destroy the monsters among them with 1,500 or more attack. Then your opponent can destroy up to 3 monsters with 1,500 or more attack in their deck. So, simply put, the changes from the original Crush card is it's no longer 3 turns, it's only the turn you activate it, which weakens it a decent amount, because the ability to then see the next 3 cards is actually really powerful. Another reason Errataed was hit down to 1. And it gives the opponent the opportunity to destroy monsters in their deck. I think of the 5 cards coming back, Crush Card is going to be the most liable, because while Konami watered it down, it's still the same basic effect. And any deck with monsters over 1,500 attack, Burning Abyss and Shadows both play Darks with 1,000 or less in the form of Hedgehog and Falco, or almost any Burning Abyss with the exception of Seer, Libic, Alec, Calcab, and a couple of the other ones. So, Burning Abyss had the best access to this card. The problem with this card is the Foolish Burial times 3 effect. Now, while, nuking off a whole bunch of cards is great, if you flip this card in a match, in a game, where they don't care if their stuff dies, you have essentially not really plus. Like, if you flip this, say, against Burning Abyss, first of all, the only monsters hittable are Dante, Virgil, and Seer. All 3 of which plus. And if they don't have the Seer on hand, they're just going to go, okay, I'm going to send Seer through my deck to the graveyard. And I don't think there's another Burning Abyss that fits that quota. So, or against Shadows, you're going to nuke their whole board. They're going to get all their cards back, and then they're going to go send Beast, Dragon, and Squamata from my deck to the grave, draw, pop, send Falco, effect set itself. Just went +3. So, that's the one problem with Crush Card. Only because of this format, things are so destruction resistant. If we were back in a format where destruction is a viable thing, Crush Card is going to be a great card again. And I feel like they watered it down, but I don't think they did it enough. It's terrible this format. Well, it's not. No, let me rephrase that. It's a side deck card for the decks that can play it. Simply because you flip it, nuke, 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 that can auto-beat some decks, like, to some extent. If Necros have already devoted their Manju Senju and don't have the Call of Souls, yeah, they do have all their spells to search, but Prep's now at 1, so if you Crush Card them at the right time, you could probably just completely stop their place for a turn. Because Cycle you need tributes from somewhere other than the grave, and Mirror you need the monster. So, it could be very devastating against some matchups. Against others, like I said, it won't do that much, but I think Crush Card's going to be the most viable. Next up is Ring of Destruction. Now, this is the only other card among them that I believe will be good, and let's read its effect. During your opponent's turn, target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls whose attack is less than or equal to their life points. Destroy that face-up monster, and if you do, take damage equal to its original attack, then inflict damage to your opponent equal to the damage you took. You can only activate 1 Ring of Destruction per turn. So, let's start breaking it down. First of all, it is now only during your opponent's turn. So, you can no longer flip it on your turn to just finish off the game. Second, it's only monsters your opponent controls. So if I put, say, 2 Blue Eyes out on the field and attack directly with both of them, they don't have a monster. The old Ring of Destruction, which I happen to have a copy of one of them because I've been playing for a while and have some really old cards, actually allowed you to destroy any monster. I'll read its effect to you now. Destroy one face-up monster card and inflict damage equal to the destroyed card's attack to the life points of both you and your opponent. So you could destroy your own monster with that. So basically, you could flip it, pop your own Blue Eyes, that's game. I know nobody plays Blue Eyes, but that was the first thing off the top of my head. Anyways, same thing applies to like Dante's, Triple Dante. You can't pop your own monster, you can't do it on your turn, and you take damage first, are the 3 big changes. The 1 per turn is kind of an irrelevant thing. You taking damage first means, because of their new ruling, which states, if a card effect, if a player's life points would be reduced to 0, even if it is the middle of a chain or a card resolving, the duel ends immediately. So, Ring can no longer cause ties. That ruling was made, so you take it, and if you hit 0, you just lose. Period. They don't take the damage, even though it's halfway through a card resolving. However, in effect, that would allow you to gain victory. Deck out also works in the same way as damage, by the way. But in effects, such as Exodia the Forbidden One, so if I Dark World Dealings and I have 4 Exodia pieces in hand, and I draw, and I hit the 5th Exodia piece, I don't win. You don't win until it fully resolves. You actually have to discard, and you just discarded an Exodia piece. So that's the new ruling. I still think Ring of Destruction is a highly viable card, simply because it's spot removal plus damage. And even if you're in a superior or an inferior position, all you do is when they go to attack you, or when they're trying to make their play, you can just instantly get rid of any 1 card on their field. And if you've pushed them to the edge of their game, to the edge of their life, so they're about to lose the duel, you just flip Ring as soon as they try to make a comeback, because they have to put something. Using the Blue Eyes example, they have to put out something bigger than 3,000 to get over the Blue Eyes, and you just Ring that. However, they could also just use removals, such as Castell, which is 2,000, by the way. So that's kind of what the differences in Ring, but I still think it's a very viable card. Now getting on to the not-so-viable ones. Starting with Temple of the Kings, which now reads, you can activate 1 trap card the turn it was set. You can send 1 Mystical Beast of Surcat in your monster zone, and this card you control to the graveyard. Special summon 1 monster from your hand or deck, or 1 fusion monster from your extra deck. You can only use each effect of Temple of the Kings once per turn. So the second effect is kind of irrelevant. It's always been there. And, I mean, it's kind of a cool effect. Maybe you could do some fun shenanigans with it. But it was never the important part of Temple of the Kings. The important part was the first effect stating you can activate trap cards the turn you were set, which is basically a Makira the Destructor. That's a continuous spell card. It's a little bit trash now, because activating 1 trap the turn it was set, I mean, cool. So I can set my Torrential, summon my monster, and Torrential the field, or I can set my Jar of Greed and flip my Jar of Greed and draw a card. Well, what about the Legacy of Yatagarasu I have in hand and the Reckless Greed? I still have to set those. So they kind of took away the best part of it. Someone will probably figure out some fun, gimmicky way to use the second effect and kind of use the first one in combination, but it lost its, like, brokenness. Next is Sinister Serpent. First of all, I'm just going to put this out there. This card really did not need to be errated. Like, oh, yay, discard. And if there was a loop with it, then that required 1 Sinister Serpent and was a really good loop, then I removed this comment. But I don't think it needed to get changed at all, because, like, oh, yay, I discard it to make the Raigeki Break, or the Phoenix Wing Wind Blast I played, useless, and then it comes back to my hand by next turn, so I can use another Phoenix Wing Wind Blast with no cost. Yay, great. Burning Abyss. They don't come back to the hand, but, you know, pitch that Graph, and I get instant plus. So we already kind of have a deck that says that removes costs from cards that discard. So its effect reads: during your standby phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can add it to your hand. Also, banish one Sinister Serpent from your graveyard during your opponent's next end phase. You can only use this effect to Sinister Serpent once per turn. So it's the same basic idea that during your standby phase, it goes back to your hand. So you can set the card and it'll go back to your hand after it dies. The reason, I think, and I don't know if you can only use this effect of Sinister Serpent once per turn was on the original card, but if it wasn't, I think the reason they put that in is so standby phase, draw, draw phase, draw, standby phase, grab back Serpent, Phoenix Swing, Wind Blast, send Serpent, grab back Serpent, because that bypasses the errata, the important part of the errata. So the big change here is banish a Sinister Serpent from your graveyard during your opponent's next end phase. So what this basically means is you get it back during your standby phase. Now, if you use a card that would make you discard that Sinister Serpent, say Phoenix Swing Wind Blast right then and there, okay, you don't get Sinister Serpent back until your next standby phase, but your opponent's next end phase comes first, so the card gets banished. That effect does not apply, however, if there's none in your graveyard. So if you don't discard something, and you just wait, and your next standby phase, and then end phase comes around, and there's nothing, you don't have to pay that cost, and then you can just pitch it and grab it back again. So what they basically did with this card was they made it so that you can only use it once every other turn. And what I mean by turn in this context, I mean your turn and your opponent's turn is one turn. So you can't use it on yours and your opponent's, and you can't, but you'd have to wait till your next turn to be able to use it again. So they basically made it so that it's once per turn. And if you once per rotation of turns, you can only use it, once every other rotation of turns. Like, you get it back, you can't use it until the next one. You get it once every rotation of turns. So it's watered down and to a point where it's no longer good because it's just too slow now. And the last card is Exchange of the Spirit, one of the most powerful cards because you could simply just FTK with it. Not so much anymore. If both players have 15 or more cards in their graveyard, pay 1,000 life points. Each player swaps the card in their graveyard with the cards in their deck, then shuffles their deck. You can only activate one Exchange of the Spirit per duel. So what this basically means, I don't know about the one Exchange of the Spirit per duel in the original card, but since it's at 1, that really isn't going to have an impact unless you Mask of Darkness it back into your hand. Sorry, couldn't remember the card name. What they basically did here is the original card, you would play a whole bunch, you would like send Mercura to the graveyard, right? And then play a whole bunch of draw spells and traps, get 15 of them into the grave, and then activate Exchange of the Spirit. And your whole deck, and you have the deck. But since this is your first turn, your opponent has no cards in their graveyard, and they just lost their whole deck. So they deck out. You just end turn, they can't draw, they deck out. Simple as that. So what this has done is basically now they have to also have 15 cards. So you could still, reduce their 25 card deck to a 15 card deck, assuming they have no cards anywhere and are playing an exact 40 deck. But, it's no longer really as broken as it was. This card might see a little bit of play from people teching it, and if it is played, I think it'll be mostly played, if it sees any play at all, in Burning Abyss, simply because you run through your deck so fast. And while you don't necessarily force your opponent to exhaust 15 cards, most people will exhaust 15 cards in the course of the duel. So in that way, you can flip the card and just get all of your powerful, like your Seers and your Dantes and your Graths and your Skarms back, and your one Tour Guide. So the card might see some just fun play, but personally I don't think it'll have any competitive impact. So my summary on the cards is, I think they overhit Sinister Serpent. I think Exchange of the Spirit and Temple of the Kings were kind of fair hits because they kind of turned the card into what the card was intended to be instead of what it was abused as. I think Crush Card Virus was a little underhit and Ring of Destruction a little bit, but they're both fair cards at one, and I think these two are going to be the ones that had the most, large-scale impact on the competitive game. So that's just my thoughts on it. We will have a Weird Deck Wednesday up tomorrow. I've got an interesting version of BA I've been playing around with. It's new list. It's kind of weird. You'll see it tomorrow. Anyways, remember to leave anything you want me to do up on this channel down in the comments section below. Remember to leave a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe for more content. And Rescue Rabbit 101 signing out.